Hallo und herzlich willkommen auf dem 38. DOK.fest und Sie sehen jetzt hier ein, wie ich finde, ganz besonderes Gespräch. Wir wollen nämlich über Breaking Social sprechen aus unserem DOK-Panorama, nicht Wettbewerb, sondern aus unserer Reihe. Und Fredrik Gertten hat sich einen Gast gewünscht, und zwar Tobias Holle. Tobias, would you like to introduce yourself and what you're an activist for?
Yes, hi, I'm Tobias. I'm from Germany, living here in Bavaria, in Straubing. And I'm activist with Fridays for Future, with other organizations, mostly on international level, so on all the international climate processes and also on sustainability in Germany for universities, because I'm studying and we have to change something at the place where we are and where we do something. So that's me.
So tell us, Fredrik, why did you ask us to invite someone for, this special Q&A?
Because I want my films to be used by people who want to do something, who want to change the world in some way or change their city, or because my previous films have been with city planning or about the housing market, like the film I had here before Push. And I've been to some other festivals and I met young people coming up and say, oh, I'm an activist, but I'm having an activist burnout. This film gave me some hope back. So in some way we're looking for, and our German distributor is also here, and they're looking for partners to show the film in Germany. So I was interested to see how the climate activists will react to the film, because I was in Prague for a screening and there was like 3 Russian girls from St. Petersburg, feminists, who came out and they were crying and said, you have to show this film in Russia because people need this hope. And it touched me and I think, okay, but maybe there is because the climate movement, which I love and admire in all the details, even if it's crazy and violent sometimes, I think it's admirable. But it's very tough to be young and send out such a depressing message all the time. So in some way I hope this film contains some kind of a different set of arguments that could maybe also be used by the activists. That was my hope. I don't know what you think, but...
Maybe Tobias, tell us what you actually think now. Does the film help you with your work? Do you have 10 new ideas how to change and save the world?
First, I would thank you for the movie because it's great. At first, it of course gives many ideas, but at first, it gives an atmosphere, it gives a feeling. It gives something. We had it there, Esperanza. We had hope. And it is so good to see over and over again what people are doing around the world. So I just have my friends, my network. I see what happens here with all the problems we have, but seeing it that's happening in the US, in Chile, in all the countries that people are standing up for something, it's really hopeful. It gives just strength, it gives powerful, the next month probably. So thank you, and it's really a great piece of art, I think.
Yeah, and the people you see in the film are also people who inspire me, of course. And of course, Chile is not so much talked about in Europe because we are so focused on other things. But for me, it could also be in Iran, like the women in Iran right now are amazing. Or many other uprisings. There was a big uprising in Lebanon or even in Iraq. And I think that most of these young people who are taking to the streets basically are angry about the same thing. That they are doing what they're supposed to do. They study, they work hard, they do everything to be good citizens. But then someone else is running away with all the money. And then on top of that, they're also buying the politics and, so so basically I think there is something in common between all the uprisings. That's my point. And so Chile was inspirational, but it could also be in something else.
Yeah, and at the same time, you can always see what's working good, but also what's working not out. You see in Chile, the referendum for the constitution failed. So in September, I think, the beginning of September. So all the work that has been done that led to the constitution had a major crush because they now need to reorganize, they need to have new narratives, and that's what's happening all the time. Of course, in Chile it's a huge thing, and it's really depressing to see that. But we have it like in smaller details in Iran, of course, and also in a big and in a huge scale. But in a small scale, we have it like every time we see it in our everyday life that. Even though we worked, I don't know, half a year, 2 years, 3 years on it, we see some lobbyists, especially fossil lobbyists, making 1 or 2 phone calls and destroying the work we've done for like 2 or 3 years in really supporting something and really pressuring and really convincing people and asking many people and trying to do the right thing for society or what we think is the right thing. But having these networks, having all these connections to government, to the people who make decisions, who make the rules. Even in Germany, it's not about like giving so much money, but they have the contacts, they have the events, they go in together, so they're really close. And that's what's happening all the time.
That's a part of my film, I think, also with this British military, former military.
And Cambridge Analytica then.
Yeah, this story is, I mean, he was a part of an election campaign industry. And they basically, I asked him, what are you selling? We are selling the victory. And that's the only thing they can sell. You will win the election with us. Which means they do anything. That's why it becomes so dirty. Election campaign, I mean, I saw there was a re-election in Berlin and the campaign was anti-bicyclist. It was like very, very vulgar campaign, but you can win because there are people in cars who are frustrated that they don't move. It's nothing to do with the bicyclist. It's just bad city planning, but you can win votes. It's vulgar, but I mean, so this is like the machine we're up against. And I think this is the dark side of the film, but it's also, we need to understand how they are organized to be able to fight them better.
Yeah, that's about these structures. So how can we, and this is really hard also in this, like it's volunteered work, it's not paid at all. Most people are like having jobs nearby, or younger people are maybe financed by the state or their parents, and we not only have to like organize actions, but we have to set up new structures, and that is a really long-lasting thing. But it needs time, it needs constant work, it needs the contacts, and you have to establish them. Of course, it's working if you have like 1, 2, or 3 actions. But if you want to change some of the systems, and not only having a campaign against one person, that's possible. But having a campaign against the system or changing it, revolution or reform or whatever, however, what you want to do, you have to get to understand the system and build it for or build a system for yourself to replace parts of it. And that's the hard thing, that's the long-term thing you have to pursue.
It is very hard to change the world, but I mean, as Rutger Bregman says, at the same moment people are getting angry, change has already started. So we should also, you remember Bregman became famous when he was in Davos telling the philanthropists, you should just pay taxes. And I asked him, why did that get so viral? Well, because everybody agrees. So most people, even politicians now say, even Joe Biden says that the rich have to pay taxes. So it's already moved somewhere. Of course, we need to push it the last. And of course, they invest a lot of money in a public agenda to keep the legislators away from legislating against them. But I think there's a lot of hope in this, to see that your anger is actually already creating change. And so, and in Chile, yes, they lost the plebiscite, and of course they were up against the same kind of machine that was telling a lot of lies about, basically it was an anti-native people's campaign, basically, that won. So they as a native people are only 50%. If you spin against them, you can get votes. It was like horrible, like campaigns can be. But I think overall, this uprising that was really violent, in the end was one big demand, a new constitution. It's very civilized demand from a movement on the street. It wasn't fuck capitalism, it wasn't burn down everything now. It was actually give us a new constitution, basically give us a new social contract. And I think that could be something people would ask for also in Germany or in Sweden or in many countries. That is, okay, we are doing what we're supposed to do, but we are not rewarded. Somebody else is running away with the money. And I mean, we know, normal work doesn't really pay. What pays is to invest money. And the more money you have, the more you can invest. And it's like it's its own machine.
But then, you mentioned the word hope, and the film ends on a very hopeful note, and it's very beautiful, and it's, enjoying life. But as a climate activist, can you actually join in the hope? Like, there will be better constitutions, there will be uprisings, but if the world is just going to end...
if I wouldn't have hope, I wouldn't sit here, I think.
So, how do you keep up the hope? Both of you.
Seeing the people, I think that's the most. Getting in movies, with friends, with all the fellow activists, but not only activists, people who inspire you, who do some groundwork that it's really helping, who support each other, and seeing that change is possible so that they create something, or I by myself create something with a group.
And you believe it's going to happen fast enough, the change?
Right now it's not, no. But it's possible, yes, because we are the people, we created the systems, and we can change them. And this is the most important, the systems, all we have around us, that we're sitting here, that we have all the political laws, everything, all the economic order, it's because we've created it. And we've created it not by created it by design and set it on, but we created it because it developed and developed and developed. And that's something we can change again. It won't happen from one day to another, but it will happen step by step, and that's what gives me hope. And
everybody in this room are here. They're coming to a documentary film festival because they believe that things can be changed, isn't it like that? It's also, and I hope that this film can be used against that feeling that you talk about, that is kind of, okay, it's too late, let's party. It's like, that's kind of, and a lot of people are going there, and some people say the rich are running away, the elites are running away, and then they become fascists. This is happening in Germany, in Sweden, everywhere, because people feel that the system is not delivering to them anymore. So this is like, we are all up against this.
But I would still like to know, I think when Rutger talks about the mean world syndrome and about the good wolf and the bad wolf, you've been doing this, without speaking about age, but you're doing this for such a long time, Fredrik. You're making movies about everything that's so unjust in the world. And having been a correspondent and, all these places you've been and the stories you've heard, have you ever suffered from the mean world syndrome and got out of it? Or were you just never affected?
No, I'm kind of light-minded. I try to make films with some kind of happy ending. It's very hard with documentaries, I must admit. It's difficult, but in this film, the people who are in this film are people fighting back in their own ways. The journalist on Malta, it's a small group of, and the worst thing happened. One of them got killed, but they keep fighting back. I mean, that's also an example to be inspired of. The teacher in West Virginia who went on strike, and the Amazon worker who in the midst of the pandemic tried to defend his workers, his colleagues, and he got fired and he started this union. It's like this is inspirational. So I think it's very much about, because the mean world cinema is also seeing all the bad things. So I think it's to see people who do something, that's inspiring. If they can, I can. You know, so I think that's enough. It's a good starting point, isn't it?
I like the part where, I don't know the name, but he said like, I'm a possibilist. And this is something that gives so much hope, because it's not only like it's going to be good or it's going to be bad, but we can do something about it. And that's what we can do. Like, of course, every day we can do something better, but we can also like reach for goals that are more systemic. And you will find people around you with a similar situation, have similar doubts, have similar hopes, that also want you to change something. Is it small? Is it local? Is it international? Is it national? Doesn't matter. It's just about, you have the people around you, and if you just ask them, not just only how you're doing and you tell them how the day was, but how you're really doing, what problems do you have? We're often doing this. We are all in our networks, we're often talking about what's really, what you're struggling with. And that's really helping to see how we can come together, because if we do this, then we see we have similar issues, we have similar problems that we want to somehow solve, or just at least want to talk about and get angry.
Would you like to ask a question? And you're not even being recorded, because we don't have a camera for you, so it's very anonymous.
Any anonymous voices?
Yes. Should I speak like this? Yeah. I'm wondering, because I heard you having this thing a little bit like a new constitution might be great, and you're a little bit like maybe we have a system that's better, and I'm wondering, because like the more about the constitution is, I think we had in Germany constitution before Hitler, and in the systems is I always feel like I don't have in my mind, I don't have systems which kind of
I have.
and I'm wondering, do you know our system, or like a written whatever, or a system that's really helping to flower?
I mean, this film's ambition is not to answer or solve all problems. I think that's something you have to do with your friends, but it's very much about starting a conversation, and I think that conversation should be, you should invite a lot of people, because the Occupy Wall Street talked about the 1%. It's kind of valid, which means that you in some way would have something in common with 99%, or like you can take off maybe with 95%. So an alliance of creating a little bit better world would be possible. So I don't think you should, I think it's a risk if you dig down and say, fuck everything, revolution, let the blood fly. I'm not sure that is what I want to achieve with this film. I want people to stand up for what we agreed on, what you teach your children, the moral you teach your children. If we could have a society that's based on what we tell our children what a society is, fine, that's a good start. How do we get there? And I think then most of those values are the values that the priest in the church would say, or the teacher in the school, or the social worker, or I mean, it's not rocket science. It's like to be decent and to be responsible, and and you can hate capitalism or you can love capitalism. But if you like capitalism, you can say, okay, can we have capitalism that respects the planet and respects human rights? Fine, you can have your capitalism. I mean, we can have different agreements,
And it can't be by design. So it always, also, even if it's a revolution, we still have people who lived for a long time in this other system before the revolution. So what we always have is a minor improvement, sometimes a major improvement, but it's always improvement. It's all building up on people who were there before. So what we can't say, okay, we now end capitalism right now, for example, and set up a new system. No, it's developing step by step, and it's improving. And by time, maybe we see, we've changed it so much. Can we call it capitalism anymore? Can we? Can't we?
I mean, right now my previous film that was here was Push, about the global housing crisis. And I mean, if we could take out the housing sector from the market, it would be a hell of a difference, wouldn't it? I mean, when there's so much speculation on top of every house, so all the rents go up. I mean, so if you can liberate some parts of this system, would be a great step, for example. Any more questions out there? Oh, inventions.
Not really a question.
A speech. It's working, yeah.
Not really a question, but just some ideas for solutions, because there could be many solutions, many doors to go out of the system. So in my mind, growing up with the 68s, having so many resistance also, we are all children of the system. So the corruption which you showed us with the elites is also our corruption in ourselves, in a smaller way. And I think one of the first major steps is to change, if you want to change the world, you have to change yourself in a very broad way. So your mindset is a mindset of the system. You might have some resistance here and some other ideas here, but your major mindset is a mindset of the system. So start with this, go out of all narratives. Because all the narratives which you send in every day by listening to the news, by going to the social media, and so on, all these signals are dominating your mindset. So you have to go out to it, try it, out from it, to find out what you really are in your own nature. And then you can start rethinking the world. I think then it starts working. By the way, I don't want to go deep in discussion. Change is a mindset, is a narrative for me.
But I totally agree, but I think...
Change their way of life, not our way of life.
Thank you. I think this is what actually happens when you see the women on the streets in Chile, is that the mindset is changing when people are out together, because they're stepping out of the fear in some way.
Resistance just gives energy to the things you want, you don't want to have. So resistance can be put in one way at the right point, but gives too much energy to the not so good things, to the bad good. It's just beating the bad good. So that's one has to see about this too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Tobias doesn't fully agree.
Just one comment on that. That's why I always talk about the system. Most of us, if we would be born or get in this position, probably, including me, won't have that much resistance or even recognize it until it's, don't want to say too late, but we're really dragged in. And it's happening, and it's not only about, like, of course, some people are pursuing this. But many people, like many, for example, politicians with good values at first, at the start, they got dragged in there because they have, or they got money from companies, because they're, not maybe because they're getting money from there directly, but they got it for an election campaign. Okay, then they are at events that that support them, or where they just meet other people, but they of course meet mostly the people from the company, or that are somehow in favor of the company. So that's how the system creates, and it's totally humane, it's totally human that we, if we get close to people, that we trust them more than people we just listen to somewhere else. So if we're more in contact with, for example, a company, if we're talking more to them, if we're building trust with them, it's totally human that we want, that we trust them more, maybe we listen to them more, maybe because we know, oh, he has 2 children, so it's nice, I know them. And then we're getting to trust them. So it's important. Some people are really to blame, and sometimes you can, of course, blame these people, they're doing this. But still, you also have to see what made them like that and try to change this. So how can we change advocacy or lobbyism, or maybe also donating for campaigns? And in the US, it's really huge.
That's about legislation. You have to, you need laws against corruption, basically. You had some.
Do you have any more questions? Please don't be shy. Otherwise, I will ask a question, and then you can
You
join
also have
in.
a beer outside later. I mean, yeah? The microphone.
No more mics.
Just your loud voice.
Or you can have mine,
No.
if you want.
Thanks for the movie. I think it was really cool and good, and I think it was necessary. But I'm wondering, was there a special moment in your life where you knew I need to make this movie?
I mean, I've made quite many films now, and these kind of films started when I did a film called Bananas that's premiered 2009, and when I premiered it in Los Angeles, I got sued by Dole Food Company, which is the biggest fruit company on the planet, and they really came after me big time. With lawyers and but also with a PR company who were like, they were buying my name on Google. They were buying people who were commenting on every, on all chat forums. It was a very heavy campaign. They were calling every journalist that interviewed me. And then I made a film about that process called Big Boys Gone Banana. So I started to kind of, when I was so attacked, and also other journalists attacked me, because they told the story basically that I was a stupid Swedish filmmaker who had made the banana workers lawyer into a hero. It was basically the banana workers were suing this company for their use of a banned pesticide that made the workers sterile. So Dole really wanted to shift the focus away from the real story. So that was a moment when I could in some way see things really clear, because I was in the middle of the storm. So since then I've been doing a lot of films about how these guys with the most money go ahead, how they buy public agenda, how they, through the strategic communication people, how they buy the politicians, how they fix legislations. Then I made a film called Bike versus Cars, which was about lobby-driven city planning. So the same forces, how they made the cities that we have 1,000 years, they changed these cities in 50, 60 years to something that didn't work anymore. We'd had cities for so long time, and suddenly they stopped to function. That's also how these guys do. So I've been really interested in that. And this film is like an even bigger take of how this big money is impacting us and the influence they are buying with their money. It's not bribing politicians. They also do that, but that's what Sarah Shea says in this film. They target small parts of legislation. She told me here in West Virginia, there is, you can measure how much chemicals there are in the rivers or coming out from the factories and so on. Everybody can go to the pharmacy and test the water, but now they are changing it so you have to measure what's in a specific fish. Suddenly it's very hard for every man to go out. I mean, so this kind of, the lobbyists are pushing small details. It's very hard to understand why they're doing it. And this is happening here in Germany, in Sweden, everywhere. So they are moving legislation. I mean, when I did this film about the housing market, I could see in my own country that the protection of the tenants was suddenly gone in many ways. The legislation was changed, and people didn't know. So there is like a way of rounding the system. So we need to understand their techniques to be able to fight them. That's this part. I mean, but this all started at that moment when I got sued by the big American.
And I think this film comes at a perfect timing because we all feel a backlash happening in the Western countries, for example. When it comes to activism of any sort, we feel like people are so offended. So I think your film is a beautiful contribution with a lot of hopeful examples, which hopefully will all make us change the world together. And I see my colleague waving at me and making very unmistakable gestures to stop now. So I hope all your questions are answered. If not, Fredrik, will you just be there for another 5 minutes outside?
Let's go down and have a beer. But
yes.
I could also say, if you would like to use this film with your union or with your school or with your friends, talk to our distributor MindJazz. They will also be here outside, because I want this film to be used for people in conversations like this. And you can also follow us on social media with the film's name, breakingsocial.film, or my name, Fredrik Gertten, wherever, so we can keep talking if you have more things spinning around up here.
So thank you so much for coming to DOK.fest, Fredrik Gertten.
Thank you.
And thanks for your time, Tobias Holle.